It's a typical July morning in Manhattan. Very hot and very humid. But regardless, it's a bustling scene just beneath the surface at St. Malachy's Church in Midtown Manhattan. For almost 50 years, this church has served as a base for one of the largest senior meal deliveries in the city, hosted by the nonprofit organization Encore Community Services. Royal Albis has delivered meals to New York City's homebound seniors for years. Today, he's loading up his car and traveling 50 blocks north through rush hour traffic to deliver a load of meals.
On a typical day, I'll get anywhere between 15 to 30 deliveries, and they'll be scattered around the city. It could be a lot.
He began volunteering during the pandemic, when there was a shortage of volunteers, but an overwhelming demand for meals, a need which has only deepened.
Well, a lot of people just have their apartments. That's all they have. You know, they're in places that they can afford, and all their income goes into staying there. And, you know, the food deliveries are important. A lot of times they don't get their meals because we're running behind, and they're calling up and saying, you know, where's my lunch? I don't have anything.
His first stop is to visit 86-year-old Chitra Desai.
Hey, Miss Chitra. How you doing today?
Chitra spent most of her life working on humanitarian missions around the globe for the United Nations.
Excuse me, can you help me here, please?
She now lives alone after losing her husband. It was a devastating loss, and now Chitra is the one who is in need of some humanity.
You have a good day.
I appreciate shaking hands.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My husband died in 1988, and I lost everything. I lost myself, and I lost everything along with it. Absolutely total loss.
Chitra has been receiving meals from Encore for the last 3 years. She suffered a bad ankle break and heard about the program during the long recovery that followed.
It makes a lot of difference because, first of all, I live alone. Second, I'm not as mobile as before. I love to cook, yes, but I cannot be standing for too long. You know, it's a problem for my knees. And when I get the meals, which I appreciate and thankful for, I add my little spices to it. Spice it up a little bit with hot pepper. And also think of people who are shut in. I call myself shut in. Why? They are seen as invisible. Who is actually coming to them? Who is actually knocking on their door? Who is actually calling to see if they're okay? Meals on Wheels is that important to us who are shut in. If I don't have anybody else coming to the door, and Meals on Wheels knock on the door, that is life. That's life.
Chitra highlights one of the more subtle but important benefits of the meal delivery program: companionship. The U.S. Surgeon General has declared that loneliness is so pervasive it is now considered a public health condition. And any time spent with Chitra, it becomes clear how much these daily visits enhance her life.
The people who are delivering the meals are so nice. You know that gentleman that I told you about, who brings the meal, he is so nice. When he comes and he says, "Good morning," he calls me Ma. "Good morning, Ma. How are you today?" "I'm fine." Isn't that nice? Somebody is asking, "How are you today?" So I don't want the elders to be invisible. No, they should be visible. They should share the wisdom that they have. Yes? They should tell their stories to people who want to hear their stories. This is the avocado growing here, see?
A more obvious benefit of the Encore meals is financial. After years of a career that ensured the vulnerable had enough to eat, Chitra is now struggling. She's living off her deceased husband's Social Security.
I live on that. Okay? And that's not much at all. But guess what? Meals on Wheels helps me because the cost of living has gone up so extremely high. So that's how meaningful it is to me. It's food. It's food. And I truly appreciate that food. That's life. Food is life. And the elders must be taken, account of, yes, we need it. Yes, it's giving us life. It's a life force. It's a healer. Food is a healer.
Encore Community Services is funded by the city to provide one meal a day for their clientele 5 days a week.
What I love about Encore, the food is a balanced meal. There is fiber, there is fat, there is, so it's being given with thought in mind.
Jeremy Kaplan is the executive director of Encore Community Services. He says he's seen a dramatic rise in need for their services.
1977, Sister Lillian, one of our founders, has told me that they started off with about 50 meals a day. And over the years, it grew. And now we're delivering 1,200 meals a day up and down the West Side, in addition to feeding about, give or take, 300 people who come to our older adult centers to dine with us. We also have two residential buildings, supportive housing for older adults who are formerly homeless with a mental illness. We provide a wide range of social services and clinical services for people who live in our residences. All in all, Encore is reaching about 5,000 older adults a year throughout the west side of Manhattan.
The need is so great that Jeremy says Encore raises additional funds so they can actually deliver 7 days a week. He knows the need is even greater, but they don't have the resources to keep up. To help aging New Yorkers further, Encore keeps eligibility for the meals rather simple.
They need to be 62 and older, and they need to be generally frail and unable to access food on their own. But that's not the story of who Encore's members are. Encore's members are the people who built New York City. These people are resilient, they're courageous, they've been through the hardest times and the best times. They have taught our children and they have created our families, and everything that we have in our city today is because of the older New Yorkers that Encore and other social service agencies like Encore care for. And now their capabilities have changed and they're not able to prepare meals for themselves, and in many cases they can't afford or they don't have the resources to afford to purchase those meals. And so we provide that for them.
Right now, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 1.3 million New Yorkers who are over the age of 65, roughly 15% of the city's population. And Jeremy says at least 1 in 5 of those New Yorkers say they struggle to come up with their next meal with the current cost of living.
Older adults are more vulnerable to inflation than other populations because they tend to be living on a fixed income. When you're fortunate enough to have a pension or a retirement fund, the value of those funds is going to decrease when inflation is up, and so inherently your income is down. But unfortunately, too many New Yorkers don't have pensions and retirement funds. They're getting just a Social Security check. And so making ends meet, purchasing just those basic necessities to live becomes harder and harder. And to add on to that, we're a very youth-centric city. So if you're an older person who's fortunate enough to be active and to be physically capable, and one who wants to go back to work to supplement your income, you have to face the issue of ageism. And so landing a job as an older New Yorker to get additional income in the face of inflation is also more challenging. Many New Yorkers are not aware of the magnitude of the situation. When you walk around the city and you look around and you look up at the buildings and the walk-ups and the brownstones and the skyscrapers, you don't think that there are tens of thousands of older people living in these buildings alone. on fixed incomes with no support other than social service agencies like Encore Community Services and their neighbors to make sure that they get the Encore for life that they deserve.